with that, welcome to today's video. In other words, fainting in front of the team, part 5. Today we have Suga, so the team Karasuno. I'm very excited for it. Again, this is a cross challenge, so before Suga became a ship, and I'm very excited for it. I'm very excited. Let's go! Suga Warakoshi, Karasuno's former regular setter, and one of the oldest players on the volleyball team, wasn't someone to get nervous easily. Quite the opposite, in fact. For the team, he often functions as emotional support, keeping them grounded when they got anxious and trying to guide them when they got lost. With the help of Daichi and Enoshita, he managed the team's very unique players quite well. He wanted them to be able to count on him, to always have their back, just like he counted on them. They've been through a lot together, highs and lows, and they have grown as a team in general and as individuals in particular. The once nervous setter has gotten stronger and better at handling pressure, inspired by his team doing the same. However, as much as he has grown in these last months, he couldn't help but feel anxious the moment he left his house today. His anxiety accompanied him through the whole day, following him through classes and the breaks up until this moment. The challenge Aiko had presented them with was still lingering at the edge of his mind, and he was excited, but it did little to drown out the worry this could go wrong. He was standing in front of the closed gym doors, his hands slightly shaking. The sound of people talking or shouting in case of Hinata, Tanaka, Noya, and occasionally Kageyama, and running echoed in the hall and to him outside. The setter gulped nervously, thinking about what he was supposed to do. How he was going to prank everyone in the gym as soon as he found the courage in him to open the goddamn metal door. Why in hell did he have to do this? How did Oikawa even come up with these kind of ideas? Did he want to make them all look as stupid as possible, or just embarrass them to their bones? He sighed. As much as the third year complained internally as well as in the group chat, he couldn't deny that he was more than a little bit curious about how things would turn out. Though there were only two options, really. Either he would fail, he wasn't too confident in his acting abilities, and they had one or two really smart people on the team, embarrassing himself miserably, or he would succeed, convincing them he really fainted, in which case he deemed the result to be chaos. He hoped for the latter. Furthermore, he hoped that in that case, Daichi and Eno would get the situation under control quickly before it got too much out of hand. Sure, he didn't plan to be unconscious for longer than a minute. However, with this team, a lot can happen in just 1 minute. Damn it. He rused the day he accepted Oikawa's invitation to the group chat, and the day the other setter had realized his crush on his captain. Not really, though. Suga thought the plan through one more time, mentally preparing himself, even though he'd probably never be really prepared for this. The only thing scaring him more than the upcoming challenge was the thought of actually confessing to Daichi, which is partially the reason he agreed. Not that Oikawa would ever betray him like that. Still, if it was a choice between doing this prank and confessing, he'd do the prank 1,000 times over. A lump formed in his throat, making it harder to breathe. Just thinking about what would happen if the captain ever found out. He would reject him, most likely, and things would get awkward. Years of friendship would be meaningless because he was selfish enough to fall for his best friend. He felt like he was trapped in one of these cheesy high school romance movies with the childhood best friend that was painfully obviously in love with the female protagonist, and she was painfully oblivious until she finally realizes after getting her heart broken by the toxic bad boy of the story. The only difference is that his and Daichi's story wouldn't have a happy end, if you want to call the girl giving in a happy ending. His anxiety spiked again when the door was suddenly opened before he got the chance to do so himself. Ukai stood in the doorframe, stunned for a second, seeing the silver-haired student in front of him. "Ah, Sugawara, good to see you're finally here. I was wondering where you've been. You should hurry, Sawamura is starting to get anxious." Yes, sorry coach for being late. He mumbled the words but stopped when it rang through to him. Daichi had been worried about him? For a second, hope sparked within his heart, but just as fast as it appeared, it vanished again, incapable of igniting a flame. Of course he had been worried. They were friends after all. Best friends, he reminded himself. You don't have to be lovers to worry for each other. Even before he fell for Daichi, he had felt concern for him and loved him as well, just not in a romantic way. There are different kinds of love, admiration, and affection you can feel towards another person, and in any case, it's only natural to be considerate towards them. Well, everyone is late sometimes. I'm heading down to the shop real quick. I forgot something, but you and Daichi can manage the team, right? It was a rhetorical question, and the older was already on his way before the setter could possibly give an answer. Not that he even intended to. He hesitated for a few more seconds to gather his thoughts once again before proceeding to walk inside. Thinking about it, he was kinda glad the coach happened to open the door, because as soon as the shock of the sudden encounter had faded, his nerves got the better of him again, and he wasn't sure if he'd ever gotten the necessary courage. God, this is the reason he'd never confess. Ah, Sugawara-kun, there you are. She smiled. A few of the others followed her example, but most of them were still caught up at practicing. More or less. Kageyama and Hinata were fully invested in training spikes. Tsukishima just watched them unimpressed, or at least he tried to look unimpressed, but his attention switched ever so slightly to a certain green-haired first year who looked like he had been practicing serves with Noya before the libero got for some reason distracted by Tanaka. The two chaotic second years were currently in an argument with Enoshita, who tried to get them under control again. Daichi had watched the spectacle in front of him, observing if he should intervene and trying to keep himself from fidgeting nervously. But the attempt was in vain. He grew more and more agitated with every passing second his vice-captain was missing. It wasn't like Suga to be late. He was always very responsible and well-organized, but something was off today. He saw the setter more than once, staring into the void, seemingly lost in thoughts, and certainly not paying attention to class, which had happened more and more these days. That, or he practically throws himself into the work, more than usual, and when he asked him about it during lunch, the older avoided the question and started rambling about something he couldn't even remember. The sudden change of behavior lately had the captain worried, especially since Suga seemed unwilling to talk to him about it, even though they'd normally help each other in such situations. Before he could even determine if he should help Enoshita calming the demonic second years, he heard Shimizu speak up behind him and turned around to face Sugawara. The setter looked back at him with a slight blush on his cheeks and still fidgety, as if he felt uncomfortable. Perhaps it was because of the manager. She was extraordinarily beautiful, and most boys get nervous in her presence. Daichi used to, but now her beauty paled next to Suga's. To him, the boy next to her looked like an angel, and he wondered why he never saw this before. He watched them as they talked a little more, and Suga changed his sports shoes. If you're so worried, you should talk to him. The ace had seen Daichi getting distracted, so he first helped Ano by redirecting Noya's focus back to Yamaguchi and then walked over to the younger. I doubt he wants to talk to me. That took the taller by surprise. Daichi and Suga have always been close, the closest of the third years to be exact. What? Why? I don't know. He just has been a little distant lately. Maybe He didn't finish the sentence, and before Asahi could ask any more questions, a low thud echoed through the hall, followed by silence. The noise slowly dying down, one after another started searching for the source. His first instinct was to look for the first years, but Kageyama and Hinata only stared back at him in confusion. It was neither of them, which he technically knew since the sound arrived from the opposite direction. But before his brain could catch up with the meaning behind this, he heard the slightly panicked voice of Kyoko whispering his vice captain's name, and it went blank. He turned around, only to freeze at the sight. It felt as if someone had replaced his blood with ice water, even though he was incapable of connecting the dots. Something was wrong, and his eyes searched for the mistake until he spotted Suga on the floor, Kyoko by his side, and completely motionless. Suga. As if that had been the cue everybody was waiting for, more and more heads turned following the captain's gaze, and in less than 10 seconds of absolute silence, hell broke loose. The reaction varied from stunned and surprised like Daichi to shocked and panicked, and soon they all started gathering around their senpai while talking and shouting incoherent phrases and suggestions. Everybody, calm down and step back a little. He needs space to breathe. Enoshida quickly took the initiative, raising his voice above the others and doing what Daichi should have done, but he found himself incapable to move so far as an inch. It only helped a little, and from somewhere behind him he heard the agitated voice of Hinata. Suga-san, please don't die. It set something off inside him. That was absurd. People don't just die. He knew that. He knew that Hinata often spoke without thinking, that he was often exaggerating, but still, he couldn't shake the thought, and it made him sick to his stomach. A new kind of pain flooded his system, and he felt nauseous. Asahi, still standing by his side, noticed and looked at him worriedly. Daichi, are you okay? He didn't know how to answer. No, he was not, but that wasn't the problem. Daichi too? What if this is some kind of poison? Poison? Are we all going to die? I don't want to die yet. Hinata, you can't die before me. Why not? Daichi tuned them out. He felt Asahi's hand on his shoulder supporting him, and it woke him from his paralyzed state. As soon as he felt strong enough to move again, he stood up and walked past Enoshida, who still worked on getting Suga and Kyoko, who cared for him, the necessary space, and kneeled beside his setter. He was impossibly grateful for Kyoko and Eno, who had been able to stay relatively calm and collected, taking matters into their own hands, and Asahi, who helped him regain his composure. What happened? I'm not sure why, but Suga suddenly collapsed. He doesn't seem injured though, and his breathing is stable. He observed the rising and falling chest as she spoke, relieved to find her words to be true. Then he turned back to his team. Noya and Hinata, you are two of the fastest. Can you please run down to the shop and get Coach? We need an adult here. And Tsukishima, do you know anything about first aid? He nodded. Can you instruct me on how to put Suga in the recovery position? Also, if anyone else is experiencing any signs of uneasiness, nausea, or lightheadedness, say something and immediately leave the gym, okay? He presented the instructions fast, but nothing except a little shiver gave his panic away. Before anyone could jump into action or even answer for that matter, they heard a silent gasp and froze as Suga stood next to Daichi. They all watched him tensed and on edge. The setter wanted to jump to his feet the moment he felt their stares, but Daichi held him down, forcing him to go slowly and insisting him with every step. Suga? Hi. Are you okay? How are you feeling? Did you hurt your head? Even though he tried to sound calm and collected, the words came out in a haste, and his slightly trembling fingers did nothing to hide his nervousness. I I'm fine, Daichi. Suga was a little overwhelmed by the situation. Guilt, embarrassment, and stress fought within himself for the upper hand, and he looked around tense, avoiding the gazes directed at him. Daichi noticed and cleared his throat. I'm going to bring Suga outside to get some fresh air and get him to the nurse's office if things get worse. The rest of you continue with practice and inform the coach when he comes back. The others stared at them in disbelief, still slightly shocked. Kageyama was the first to return to training, which made Hinata follow, and soon everybody was back on the court. Everybody except for Suga and Daichi, of course, more or less concentrated on the task at hand. Meanwhile, Daichi walked his crush over to a nearby bench and made sure he sat securely before handing him his black jacket. It wasn't exactly cold outside, but since Suga had just fainted, he wanted to make sure that the other wouldn't get a cold or something. Are you feeling alright? His voice was a lot calmer now that a couple of minutes had passed, Suga awake and showing no signs of fainting again. Yes, thank you, though this is unnecessary. He pointed at the jacket and chuckled nervously, still avoiding Daichi's gaze. Instead, he looked very invested with the ground to his feet. It bothered the young girl more than he was willing to admit, and he kneeled down in front of him. I just want to make sure you're okay now. Do you think we should go to the nurse? No, he answered too quickly. Suga, I know you might not want to, but... He was interrupted by the setter, who laughed dryly at that. I'm really worried about you, so please, take this seriously. His laughter died immediately, and shame became prominent on his face. I know. I'm sorry. But it really is unnecessary. And why is that? Daichi snapped back, feeling guilty as Suga flinched. He didn't mean to snap at him like that, to let the anger get the better of him. It wasn't even anger, or at least none directed at the setter. It was worry about him, and he was annoyed with himself that he didn't notice sooner, and that he wasn't capable of helping the other whenever he found him lost in his thoughts or overwhelmed by too much work. I'm sorry. Zanbei, this was all my fault anyway. His fault for doing the stupid prank. His fault for listening to Aikawa, and goddamn his fault for falling for him. Daichi, his best friend. This whole fainting was a prank Aikawa suggested. I'm sorry for doing it. That was stupid. He couldn't look him in the eyes, too afraid of his reaction, and his voice trembled, confessing to the challenge. Thank goodness. Daichi sighed. He could have screamed out of joy, though all he managed was a breathless laugh, as he embraced his best friend tightly. You are not mad? I am, just way more relieved. Still, prepared to run some extra laps. Daichi added, and they said I couldn't help but join his laughter. Thank you all so much for watching to the end. I hope you liked it. If you did, consider leaving a like because it really helps this channel. And consider subscribing so you won't miss out on anything in the future. Like, for example, the next two parts of this series, which will be Shiro Toizawa and Dateko. I'm excited. On that note, you can vote in the community post which team is supposed to be next as soon as it's out. And tell me your favorite quote of this video in the pinned comment, under the pinned comment. Special thanks to my nerdy Nekos, and now I hope you have a wonderful and amazing day. Check out these social media and more videos in the end card.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.